Stories that panic you all.
Well, isn't this a surprise? If you're listening to this episode, I'm going to fill you in on the unusual sight that has met our viewers today, which is that I'm presenting the podcast alone from an empty studio. Where's Lucien? Where's Emily? Did our empty seats? Did our interview last week with investigative journalist Jeff White scare them away? Could it have been his outburst against USB-C chargers that sealed the deal? Well, fear no more. Allow me to unburden you from what I'm sure is the heavy weight of your concerns. Our usual presenters are, in fact, still with us. They are just in virtual form this week, as they are both attending... Oh, the... Way, there we go. We did have the version in the chair of the photo from the 90s, but alas, they are both attending the IGF in Oslo this week, so they are virtual. Welcome to the Internet Seriously, a humorous look at tech, news and politics. I'm Alice Taylor in Oxford.
And I think it's me that you're looking at now. I'm Lucien Taylor in Oslo in Norway.
And I'm Emily Taylor, also in Oslo.
A nice, yeah, exactly. An exciting and unusual change this week, but I'm going to have a go at hosting. So, coming up, as another heated debate breaks out in our comments section, we ask, could AI therapists be a force for good, or are we placing the lives of the most vulnerable in the hands of software developers? The battle against ticket scalpers, a new BBC investigation digs into the murky world of ticket scalping. We ask, how is the internet helping facilitate this global problem? And finally, this year marks the 20th anniversary of the Internet Governance Forum, an international conference where governments, academics, and the technical community join forces in an attempt to regulate the internet. We ask Lucien and Emily, after 2 decades, are we any better at controlling the online world, or are things worse than ever? Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify, where you can find all episodes of our podcast, which goes out live every Friday, usually at 10:30 a.m. It's a bit different this week because of the whole Oslo thing. We also have a TikTok and a Patreon, where you can now find exclusive live streams which have behind-the-scenes content of our Chronically Online series, which is presented and written by me. So I'm going to try and plug it at every opportunity I have. So, our first topic this week, Lucien and Emily, what has made you abandon the podcast this week and go all the way to Norway?
Well, I think I can help with...
Can we just deal with
shot
this?
of an empty chair
Yeah,
and then
an
young
empty chair.
AI-'d Lucien with his guitar.
Yeah.
Well, I can report that we have been attending the Internet Governance Forum. It's the 20th anniversary of the IGF, as it's known, and it's been wonderfully hosted here by the Norwegian government in Oslo, just outside Oslo. And all of these sort of big milestone anniversaries make one reflect, and there's been a lot of reflection this week about, the impact of the IGF and what does it mean 20 years on. And for me, I was on the original multi-stakeholder advisory group back in the day in 2006 to 2012. And so a lot of the old timers like me turned up again. And so it was like a kind of school reunion in a way, and lots of reflection on things, as well as a lot of really great sessions.
So can you just, for anyone who's kind of unfamiliar with the internet policy world, if you can imagine being unfamiliar with such a riveting and engaging scene, could you just explain what is the Internet Governance Forum? What is its purpose, and what effect does it have for just the everyday person using the internet?
Oh, thanks for that. The Internet Governance Forum was set up under the auspices of the United Nations 20 years ago, and it was really the most tangible outcome of a process called the World Summit on the Information Society, which was held between 2003 to 2005. And its actual founding statute is the Tunis Agenda, paragraph, I think, 72, something like that. And it describes the Internet Governance Forum as a place where people can gather to discuss policy issues relating to the digital environment, but it is not a decision-making forum, and that's a really important aspect of it. It has all sorts of things that are set out in the Tunis Agenda that it can cover, and the main thing to note is that it's got a very, very wide ambit. And actually, because it's a non-decision making forum, there's been a lot of a derision of it, really, because it does the world need another talk shop? And
It's
actually,
sort of on the one hand this, on the other hand this, not really making your mind up.
What's the point of turning up? Because you're not going to negotiate a treaty if you're not doing something that will definitely lead to a policy change. Why show up?
So, Lucien, this year, what is it that you specifically have been doing at the Internet Governance Forum?
Yeah, I just wanted to react to what Emily said about the IGF, because I've normally gone along as a bit part player, as sort of Emily's handbag holder, and just sort of I'm interested in the internet governance in general. But I've always found the internet governance is like a band, like Fleetwood Mac meeting backstage, and the guys get together and they all talk to people. And then one of the little roadies, me, says a few words, and they're like, "Oh, he's interested."
Yeah. So it's like a behind-the-scenes meeting
as a
of
principal
Fleetwood Mac.
player.
Yeah.
This year I was there as a principal because I had some technical things to propose to the Internet Governance Forum, and I was actually on a couple of round tables. And in fact, I was asked by the Norwegian government, a really proud moment for me, to present as a keynote, which means you get a free hotel room, you get kind of VIP treatment, and that was absolutely extraordinary. And I just wanted to say, I found the Norwegian government and the Norwegian people actually extraordinarily nice and hospitable people. I sat next to a member of the Norwegian government who helped arrange this. They were really humbled and really happy to hear it, but they did sort of reflect in confidence with the rest of the world on the internet, seriously, that it was a bit old. We were celebrating 20 years of the IGF, but it was like an old band getting to.
Do you mean
together.
as in like the age demographic of people attending is quite old, or do you mean something else by that?
I think it's the atmosphere of the whole show.
Yeah.
It feels like a bunch of people who have been doing stuff for 20 years, and the internet is kind of moving on. And I think there's a sense of urgency around that. There's a sense of sort of, and there's this thing called WSIS plus 20, which means 20 years on from the World Summit or something, where they're all talking about the next generation of the IGF. And I notably, I felt the voices of young people and technologists like myself are pretty absent. I mean,
what do you think we can do to address that? How can you make it a more welcoming space for younger people?
Well, it's a really interesting question, because we were commissioned by the UK government to do a study on the impact of the Internet Governance Forum, and we published it last March. And one of the major successes of the IGF has been its youth program, as well as its national and regional IGFs. And, actually compared to a lot of similar kind of movements like the ICANN process or the IETF, where you really do get a sense of an aging population turning up each time, the IGF has always, to me, felt very inclusive. It's a much more international meeting than those other two processes. You see a lot of people from Africa, from other global south regions, and there's an opportunity for those people to really have their voice. Speaking to people who had negotiated the mandate of the Tunis Agenda, the IGF was really put in at the 11th hour, right at the end, and the negotiators, all of the negotiators, were like, oh, does the world really need another talk shop? And actually, it has been the most tangible outcome of the Tunis agenda. However, we're gathering at the point, where a lot of people were in the sky traveling here when the US bombings of Iran happened. The world is feeling very much more of a dangerous place. There's a lot more pessimism about the harms of technology, the divided nature of societies, and a lot of people are reflecting, did technology do that? And a lot of us who've been around here for 20 years, we were watching this film, The Last Showgirl, starring Pamela Anderson, last week. And I kept on talking to particularly my female colleagues, and we were like, we feel like Pamela Anderson in The Last Showgirl. In that film, she's in a show in Vegas. She's a dancer in a glamour show in Vegas. Not that the IGF is at all glamorous, by the way, but it's just closing, and she's spent her entire career there. And at the end of it, it's like, it's actually a bit shit. Is it a bit shit? Have we actually saved the internet
Spent all
through
this
the IGF?
time doing this.
There's a lot of anxiety about, how did we do? How's the internet doing?
So our next topic that I want to kind of bridge to is AI therapists. But before that, it's time for our guilty pleasure online. Lucien Taylor, what is your guilty pleasure online?
Oh, you keep trapping me because I'm always interested in doing the Tech Room 101 because I've got a long list of complaints about the internet, but I'm being forced to think about nice things. Yeah. So thank you very much. Is this AI therapy I'm getting here, or is this just everyone in the studio there having a good giggle? So I'm going to talk about my WhatsApp family group. Because that is an absolute guilty pleasure online, because what I'm doing is it's a way of engaging and communicating without having to do lots of writing. So what we basically have is a family group chat where we all join and we're all just sort of writing everything, but that includes bilateral conversations between two individuals, and the other two, because we're a family of 4 in the group, just lurk and kind of can cruise by. And in a way it's a bit like sitting in a family kitchen and overhearing two people having a private conversation,
chat.
But you're allowed to overhear it. So it's not really
There's
private.
Definitely like a human yearning for the group chat as a thing. Yeah. We seem to like it more than just a direct one-to-one message.
Yeah. And also that, you do sort of take in things, but you're not forced to engage. Typical topics that I like, are a guilty pleasure for me are stupid animals. Various micro families within our super family have different animals, and we get a constant stream of their nonsense because animals, for some reason, are absolutely hysterical.
Always bringing the comedy. So I want to move on now to my topic, which I brought this week, which is AI therapists. Now, the thing that got me thinking about AI therapists was that we've had another little disagreement in our comment section, because last week we were talking with Jeff White, an investigative journalist, about AI and the controversy around AI, because we'd had an argument on, AI is going to ruin the world, or AI is just here and it's this big hype that's really overblown. And yet again, the comment section has delivered. People have been talking about the energy consumption of ChatGPT with some very different, very strong opinions. So somebody pointed out that watching one TikTok actually uses 3 times more energy than using ChatGPT once. But interestingly, it uses 2 times less energy than generating an AI art image. So there's a lot to think about there. But what I wanted to talk about is the sort of ethical debate about AI therapists, because it's the Internet Governance Forum, and this week I watched a presentation by Doris Maguire, which was about AI therapists. And Doris shared some really, really harrowing personal experiences about her own mental health journey and how she herself had experienced severe depression and many suicide attempts and ideation. And it was really amazing to hear about her experiences. And what I found really interesting is that she, from a perspective of having accessed AI therapy, was quite pro AI therapy and presented quite a positive story about how AI therapists might be a force for good. So, Lucien and Emily, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that AI therapy is something that could be an ethical good? Do you think that there's lots of problems involved? What do you think about this?
First of all, I think it's incredibly courageous when people are able to speak up and share their personal experiences in mental health.
So I'm sorry, your microphone, I don't know if... there we
is
go.
it-
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah,
It's been fixed. It's been fixed.
it's been fixed.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it's incredibly courageous and inspiring when people can speak up and share their personal experiences. And, you know, from my perspective, having been in tech policy for 25 years or so, often the harms that you imagine will happen from technology don't. And the things that you don't really worry about turn into a huge problem. And so I'm actually, I don't know what to think about AI therapists. I can imagine that if you don't have access to any therapy whatsoever, this might help. I can also imagine that there are huge ethical problems about how it works, what it suggests, whether it takes the cues from the individual and leads them down dangerous rabbit holes. Who is supervising? Is there a human in the loop? All of those things. But in that context, personal testimonies, such as the one you heard, are very important. Because if it has helped.
Well, so Doris presented an example of sort of older generative AI models versus newer ones, and the older ones, you'd give the prompt, I want to jump off a building, and the AI would respond, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. Please seek some support. So, Lucien, what do you think about the idea of AI therapists and particularly, you know, these responses to these sort of prompts?
The first thing I want to say is I'm really sorry. I think the sound is flappy, so it's quite difficult. I think it's Doris. I wanted to say I'm sorry for her story, but I think it's fantastic to reach out and share these sort of heroic discussions really about this, because there are millions of other people out there that need this help. There's two things I want to respond to on the AI point, you know, both AI energy and AI for help in what I call an emergency. The first is the AI energy. I think we're skewing the conversation all the time. You know, yeah, the pure consumption of AI energy is a raw, very binary thing that is just cooking. You know, I'm talking to people at the IGF who are building colossal data centers. I do think we have to offset the cost of AI against the cost of a human equivalent. And you've got to, you know, if you think about, and you know, I'm not over passionate about one or the other. I think there should be room in this world for advances in technology, because it can be wonderful, but it can also be exploitative, abusive, and can cook the planet. So we should always try and look after the planet in whatever we do, and certainly when we normalize these technologies. But you've got to offset the cost of generating one picture to the cost of me eating 4 dinners and doing some research about who's a good artist, catching a bus down to meet that artist, booking an appointment in that artist's house with all their lights on, you know, in the middle of winter with their heating on, you know, to something that takes a few seconds. So there's always, all I'm saying is I'm not, you know, and I really don't want to get into the polemic arguments about
because it's definitely
AI,
a really polarized issue,
quite
isn't
militant.
it? Yeah.
So, you know, trying to stay on the fence, folks, please don't drag me down one way or the other. The other thing about Doris's thing, AI AI therapy. I think AI really has a place where you're in an emergency. And I think we differentiate too much between physical illness and mental illness. If you're stuck up a mountain and you need an operation quick, and your colleague can kind of ring up a surgeon and he can help you with AI, guide you through a remote hands operation. In that emergency, AI is a wonderful thing. In mental health, there's pardon me, there are no resources to help people. There are no therapists. There's not enough money in the NHS. So it's an emergency for people who need help. If there's a bit of electronic support they can have, no different to somebody watching a really good series on television.
My thought about this is there's plenty of human therapists out there, and they've got all these qualifications, and actually they're just not the right person for that person, or they say quite unhelpful things. So isn't there this risk anyway, even when you access real therapy, that you might not get the help that you really need?
I agree. And I think that some human therapists can be extremely harmful and exploitative, and others can literally save people's lives. Alice, I'm interested in what other kind of colours and reactions there were on the panel and from the audience at that IGF session that you attended.
Well, it was a bit more of a presentation, so it was mainly just hearing from Doris and her sharing her experiences. She really did give both sides of this debate, this discussion. For example, we don't currently have any ethical guidelines around the use of AI therapists, and she was really calling for that to happen because, everything in healthcare should be evidence-based. And I think from just the anecdotal evidence, it sounds like, as you said, Lucien, AI therapy is filling this gap. If it's 3 a.m. and you're feeling very, very low, you need to get in a queue in the NHS that could be months. Whereas ChatGPT, you can just message and say, I'm feeling very depressed. And already there are responses, compared to the older models of AI that are a lot more structured, helpful. They do things like acknowledge the person's feelings, point them towards resources that are more helpful. But something that Doris, so she had set up a startup called Kijiji Link, where she thinks that AI therapy plays a role in a sort of network, a village, she called it, of support that involves humans as well, and that AI should not replace, but it should instead augment. And I think that really fits with what both of you have been saying. We need more guidelines, we need there to be a framework so that everybody's safe and protected. But also, it does sound like there is a potential for AI therapy to become part of a broader support network for people who are struggling with mental health. I do want to move on to our final topic, which is a bit different. It's ticket scalpers. But before that, it's time for our Tech Room 101. Room 101. Emily Taylor, what is your Tech Room 101?
My Tech Room 101 this week is fake DocuSign scam messages.
Oh, what does that mean? Can you explain more?
Yes.
Fake DocuSign.
2 things. Number one, we have started to set up a kind of repository among the staff at Oxford Information Labs so that we're collecting screenshots of all of the scam messages that we're receiving. And it's been really interesting for me because I've realized how much I just ignore scam SMSs, scam emails. But 2 that I got this week that I really nearly went for and clicked on.
And so just as context, you're, we would say, an expert in scams and fraud and in combating scams and fraud, and you've nearly you've nearly clicked on these links. What are they?
So I am spending a lot of my time negotiating contracts at the moment. And when you finish the negotiation, particularly with big corporates, they will send the contract through DocuSign, which is a secure way of signing, finishing off a contract, signing it electronically. And you get a kind of a quite recognizable message with a big DocuSign thing and a big button to click and some blurb that you never read, and off you go and click it and sign it. But I've received two just this week that because I'm in the zone of like
And you just
expecting
want
contract,
the contract
and
to
I'm
be
like,
finished.
and I was just like,
It's
you want the contract
yeah, a
finished?
sense of
You're like,
relief.
here it is.
Yeah.
But actually something made me stop. First of all, I didn't recognize the send email address, but actually with a lot of these services, the send email address isn't particularly informative. It didn't say anything about what the contract was. And the sender seemed to be called Oxil, which is our company name. So I was like, now apologies to anybody who is expecting me to sign a contract and I just have thought it was a scam. But also Mark, our fellow director, had received one as well.
It's amazing,
and I
isn't
think
it?
these are
How
incredibly
much
insidious.
more. It's like I would never think of this, and scammers out there and fraudsters are just getting more and more creative with their techniques and the things that they're thinking of. So speaking of kind of opportunities to commit scams and fraud, this brings us to our final topic, which is about ticket scalpers. So since 1994, it has been a criminal offence to resell tickets for football matches in the UK, with a maximum penalty being over £1,000 of a fine. And yet in 2024, the BBC have uncovered ticket touters who are making millions, hiring people overseas, known as ticket pullers. So Lucien, you brought this topic to the podcast this morning. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, I had some personal experience of this because I was one of those hapless, sad, old fans trying to apply for Oasis tickets. And the experience going through the Ticketmaster website was so unpleasant, it actually put me off the band. It made me feel that this was some commercial arena and not a bunch of wannabe punks from up north trying to do a reform.
So what was
really,
your experience with the site? What was it that put you off?
It put me off because the site was so febrile and active, and basically, seats were becoming available, and then the site was underserved by its servers, and so it was completely hammered. And the ticket scalping will come to explain that really. The net effect was that I just was offered fantastic seats. My whole plan was to get in there, get the best seats I can for me and my friends and family, as many as I could. And I was offered stuff, and by the time I put them in the cart, the whole stadium was sold out. And I just thought, well, I'd sat in a queue of 20,000.
Some of our kind of viewers or listeners, they might say, oh, well, you missed out on that, on the ticket rush. How would you respond to that?
Well, this is Britain. We queue, know, and I was in the queue and I was number 10,000. And then 4 hours later, I was number 2,000. And then it was my slot and it was my turn. And it's the equivalent of like, no, sir, I know you've queued all afternoon for your tickets, but here's 15,000 more important people than you who are now allowed to come ahead of you in the queue because they've just, got some kind of advantages. Now, when we think about scalping, this kind of explains this because they're basically, they're at the heart of these illicit operations. And Alice, you mentioned in the preamble that, that it's now a criminal offence and you're going to be fined £1,000.
Well, it's been a criminal offence since 1994. And, I remember in like 2010, literally seeing ticket scalpers standing outside. I was going to a musical concert, just standing there being like, tickets, want to buy tickets? And it's like, so we don't seem to have really done a good job at enforcing this.
Haven't really sorted that, have we?
Well, but you said it in the intro, it's a £1,000 fine, but then they're making £1 million.
Yeah.
So £1,000 fine is just a minor tax on their fantastic beneficial service. But essentially, it's illicit operations using electronic bots and fake IDs. That's paramount to it. So scalper bots are like advanced pieces of software that give touts an unfair edge over the ticket process by automating and accelerating the purchase process so they can bypass online queues at superhuman speeds and and complete transactions in milliseconds. And they even use sort of from abroad sort of gangs who get around captures as well, and are able to monitor newly released tickets. So this is a highly geared up thing that's been defeated or challenged by quite a lumpen kind of criminal police process. And that's something at the Global Signal Exchange, which is what we've been talking about here at the IGF, is trying to defeat, trying to get a bit more steampunk about this and tool up and get some electronic energy.
Emily, can you explain a bit more about sort of, is this a police problem? Is this a tech problem? And what can we actually do to try and stop this? Is there anything that can be done?
Well, it's like most complicated problems, it's a bit of everything. So you've highlighted that there's been a law in place for, 30 years or something, still going on. So, I mean, this often comes up in policy type of discussions. You can make as many rules as you like, but if you can't enforce them, there's no point. And so, you know, and the jeopardy that you have to be in breaking the law has to be worse than any profit or any benefit that you would be getting by being a criminal.
And as Lucien said, it's
there's clearly a problem there, isn't there?
Or £1,000 fine versus the millions that you can make from doing your ticket scalping. So clearly, that's not the case. And
I think there's also a sort of a general issue with moving from things that used to be face to face. So if somebody comes into a box office and says, "Can I have all your tickets, please, for all of your shows?" and they look a bit dodgy, you go, "No, go away." But there really isn't an equivalent in the online environment. You know, you can't really size people up, and you know, one transaction looks very much like another, and that is one of the challenges. It's one of the reasons why so much of cybercrime is difficult to detect. I mean, on one of our panels this week, a speaker from Meta, Rima Amin, was saying, you know, when they're looking at engagement around romance scams, actually those engagements, those conversations with people between a scammer and their victim are actually very like human conversations between two people who are, you know, maybe considering a romantic relationship or in one. And so if you become too aggressive with the wrong type of intervention, you end up upsetting legitimate customers and interfering places you shouldn't be. And at the same time, if you don't do anything, things go crazy.
Thank you for that. I just want to get one final thought. Lucien, is this the fault of the police, the tech community, or something else?
Yeah, we call this the circular firing squad. It's not. It's the fault of all of us not working together, because at the heart of these scams, touting scams, and also all of scams is fake IDs and people pretend, you know, romance scams, people pretending to be someone else. And with fake electronic IDs, you can hyperscale that through emails and SMS messaging, two-factor that's fake, and you can just hyper accelerate fake ID-ness. So actually relying upon just an electronic IDs, that sort of helps, but it can then be weaponized and employed by scammers to create false reassurance, both to victims of romance scams, the ticket systems, and also general scams that we're trying to fake. So no, it's not any individual's fault in what we call the internet supply chain, but it is all of our fault.
That's really interesting to reflect on. So we've come to the end of our podcast. This week, we were thinking about 20 years of the Internet Governance Forum. Is there more to do? And how do we make it a more inclusive and welcoming space, particularly for young people? We also discussed the very, very controversial ethical issue of AI therapists, and we've sort of ended up not really strongly on one side or another, but feel that there could be potential for a positive future with AI therapy. And finally, we've been talking about ticket scalpers, scammers and fraudsters, and how it is all of our responsibility to come together and find a solution. I've been Alice. Thank you very much for listening to the Internet Seriously.